Go look in your pantry right now. Go ahead, I'll wait. Pull a few things off the shelf and turn them over and read the little stamp on the bottom, the cereal, the crackers, the jar of peanut butter you opened last spring. Read the date, best by, use by, sell by. Every one of them has a clock printed on it, and that clock is ticking whether you bought the food yesterday or 6 months ago. Now I want you to do the arithmetic that the people who printed those dates are hoping you never do. If every single thing in your house has an expiration date, then you do not have a pantry. You have a countdown. You have a room full of food that is quietly turning into garbage on a schedule somebody else set, a schedule designed so that you have to come back to the store and buy it all over again before the year is out. And here is the part that should stop you cold. It did not used to be this way. There was a time, and it was not even that long ago, when a family kept food in the house that would still be good when the children who were born that year were grown and married. Food that outlived the people who stored it. Food with no clock on it at all. My name is Amos Stoltzfus. I am Amish. I live on a farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, that my family has worked for 4 generations, and in the cellar beneath the house where I am sitting right now, there are foods that are older than I am. Some of them are older than my father, and every one of them is still good, still safe, still feeding my family. I am going to show you 13 of them. I am going to tell you what they are, why they last, and exactly how to store them so they last for you too, in your house, starting this weekend. Most of them cost almost nothing. Most of them you can buy at any grocery store today. And by the time I am done, you are going to understand why the food companies would very much prefer you keep buying the kind with the clock on it. Stay with me. This one matters. Before I go further, let me tell you plainly who I am, because you should not take any man's word on faith, mine included. I have never in my life walked into a store in October to stock up for winter the way you might. I have never worried about a supply chain. When the truck stopped running a few years back and you all watched the shelves go empty on the news, nothing changed in this house. We ate the way we always eat, out of the cellar and the smokehouse and the spring house, the same as my grandmother did, the same as her grandmother did before her, all the way back to the people who carried this knowledge across the ocean from the old country in a wooden trunk. We are not preppers. I want to be clear about that, because that word has gotten strange. We are not waiting for the end of the world. We are just living the ordinary way that every family on earth lived for thousands of years, before the refrigerator and the grocery store taught everybody to forget. A man stored food because that is what a man did. You put up enough in the good months to carry your family through the lean ones, and you stored it in a way that it would keep, because if it spoiled, your family went hungry. There was no margin for waste. There was no running to the store. So everything I am about to tell you was earned the hard way by people who would have starved if they got it wrong. This is not a theory. This is not a life hack. This is the accumulated knowledge of people whose lives depended on getting it right, handed down so carefully that I can stand here today and tell it to you exactly as it was told to me. Now, the food. Let us begin with the one that truly does last forever, because it is the most remarkable of all, and once you understand why it never spoils, you will understand the whole secret behind every other food on this list. Honey does not spoil. Not in a year, not in 100 years, not in 3,000 years. I am not exaggerating for effect. Archaeologists have opened sealed pots of honey in ancient tombs, honey that was put there before Rome existed, and it was still good, still sweet. You could have spread it on bread. Here is why, and it is beautiful in its simplicity. Honey is almost completely free of water, and the little water that is in it is locked up so tightly that no mold, no bacteria, nothing alive can get to it. On top of that, honey is naturally acidic, and the bees themselves add an enzyme that makes a tiny amount of hydrogen peroxide. So honey is dry, sour, and self-cleaning, all at once. Nothing can grow in it. Nothing. It is the one truly immortal food in your kitchen. In this house, we keep honey in stoneware crocks and in glass, sealed with a lid, in the dark of the cellar. You will hear people fret that their honey went bad because it turned solid and grainy. It did not go bad. That is crystallization, and it is the most natural thing in the world. Set the jar in a pan of warm water, not boiling, just warm, and it goes back to liquid gold like it was the day it came off the comb. So this weekend, buy raw honey, the real kind, in glass if you can. Keep the lid sealed tight, keep it out of the sun, and never put a wet spoon in the jar. That is the only way you can hurt it, by introducing water from the outside. Do that and a jar of honey will outlive you and feed your grandchildren. The second food is salt, and salt is not just a food that lasts forever. Salt is the reason half the other foods on this list last as long as they do. Without salt, my ancestors would not have survived a single winter in Pennsylvania. Salt is a mineral. It came out of the ground or out of the sea, and it is already as old as the earth itself. It cannot rot, because there is nothing alive in it and nothing for anything alive to feed on. Keep it dry, and it will sit on your shelf, perfectly good, until the sun burns out. The only enemy salt has is moisture. If it gets damp, it clumps up, and if it stays damp long enough, it can turn into a hard brick. But even then, it has not gone bad. Break it up, dry it out, and it is exactly as good as the day you bought it. We buy salt by the sack and store it in a dry crock with a tight lid, up off the cellar floor where the air is driest. My grandfather used to say that a family with salt could survive almost anything, because salt does not just season your food, it preserves it. It draws the water out of meat and fish so nothing can grow on them. It makes the brine that puts up your cucumbers and your cabbage for the winter. A pound of salt is worth more than a pound of almost anything else you could store, because of all the food it lets you keep. So this weekend, buy plain salt, the cheapest kind without additives, by the largest bag they sell. Pour it into a dry, sealed container. That is it. You have just bought yourself the cornerstone of a real food store for a couple of dollars, and it will never expire. The third is white sugar, and sugar is salt's twin in this regard. Pure white sugar, stored dry, lasts indefinitely. There is no expiration to it. Like honey, it works by being so dry and so concentrated that nothing living can survive in it. That is the very reason sugar preserves your jams and your fruit butters. It pulls every drop of available water away from the spoilage. People get fooled by sugar because it likes to harden into a rock if any moisture sneaks in. They think it has gone bad. It has not. A hardened block of sugar is just sugar that got slightly damp and then dried. Put a slice of fresh bread in the container for a day, or break the block up with a spoon, and it loosens right back to normal. We keep sugar the same as salt in a dry sealed crock, and a good deal of what we put up for winter, the apple butter and the canned peaches and the preserves, depends entirely on it. Sugar is not just a treat in a real food store. It is a preservative, an energy source, and a trading good all at once. A note of plain honesty, because I will not lie to you. Brown sugar and raw sugars hold a little molasses, which means a little moisture, so they can clump and lose quality over the years, even though they stay safe. For true long storage, plain white sugar is the one. Keep it dry, keep it sealed, and it is good for a lifetime. The fourth food is white rice, and white rice is the king of long-storing grains. Stored properly, white rice keeps for 30 years or more. There are families and institutions that have eaten 30-year-old stored rice and found it perfectly good. 30 years, from a food that costs you pennies a serving. The reason is that the milling process that turns brown rice into white rice strips away the bran and the oil-rich germ. And oil is the enemy of long storage, as you will hear me say more than once today, because oil goes rancid. Strip the oil away, and what is left is almost pure starch, dry and stable, with nothing in it to turn. That is the whole secret. White rice lasts because there is so little in it that can spoil. I will give you the same warning the old people gave. Brown rice does not keep. That oily germ that makes it healthier is the same germ that makes it go rancid in a matter of months. For a long store, it must be white. In this house, dry goods like rice go into the cellar in containers a mouse cannot chew and an insect cannot enter, sealed against the air. If you want the very longest life, store it as dry as you can in a sealed container away from heat and light. Heat is the great destroyer of stored food. A cool, dark, dry place will double or triple the life of nearly everything you put in it. So this weekend, buy white rice in bulk, get it into a sealed, pest-proof container, and tuck it somewhere cool and dark. You have just bought your family 30 years of meals. The fifth food is dried beans and lentils. If rice is the king of stored grains, dried beans are the queen, and together on a plate they make a complete protein, a full meal that can keep a working body strong with no meat at all. My people have eaten beans and corn and beans and rice through more lean winters than I could count. Dried beans, kept dry and cool, are good for a very long time, many years, often decades. Here is the one honest thing you must understand about them, and almost nobody tells you. Very old dried beans are still perfectly safe and nourishing, but the oldest of them get hard, and hard old beans can take a very long time to soften on the stove, sometimes hours and hours. They do not spoil, they just toughen. A long soak overnight, and a slow, patient simmer brings even old beans back. A pinch of baking soda in the soak water helps too. So when you read that beans only last a few years, what they usually mean is that they take longer to cook, not that they have gone bad. We store our beans the same as our rice and our corn, dry, sealed, cool, and dark, safe from mice and weevils. A sack of beans is one of the cheapest and most powerful things you can put up. It is protein that waits patiently for you year after year, asking for nothing. So this weekend, buy dried beans, lentils, split peas, whatever your family will eat. Buy them dry, seal them up, store them cool. Rotate the oldest to the front so you eat them in good time. Cheap, simple, and they will be there when you need them. The sixth food is dried corn, and corn is the food this land gave to the people who first lived here, and they had it figured out long before my ancestors ever arrived. They knew that fresh corn rots in days, but dried corn keeps for years, and that knowledge kept whole nations alive through long winters. When you take the water out of corn by drying it hard, you take away the one thing spoilage needs. Properly dried whole corn, kept dry and sealed, lasts for years and years. We grind it into meal as we need it, because here is the catch, and it is the same catch as with the rice. Once you grind it, the clock starts. Whole grain keeps far longer than ground meal because grinding exposes all that surface to the air, and the little bit of oil inside begins to turn. So we store it whole and grind it fresh. That one habit, store it whole, grind it fresh, is one of the great secrets of long food storage, and it applies to corn, to wheat, to all of it. There is an old trick called parching, toasting the dried kernels, that makes a corn you can carry in your pocket and eat on the walk, the kind of thing a man took into the fields or the woods for the day. It keeps a good long while and needs no cooking at all. So this weekend, if you can get whole dried corn, store it whole, sealed and cool, and grind small amounts as you need them. If you can only get cornmeal, buy less of it at a time and keep it cold, even in the freezer, because ground meal does not have the patience that whole corn does. The seventh is apple cider vinegar, and vinegar is one of those wonders that does not go bad because it is, in a sense, already spoiled in exactly the right way. It is so acidic that nothing harmful can live in it. That same acid is why vinegar preserves so much else. Your pickles, your relishes, your chow-chow that I will tell you about shortly. Apple cider vinegar, kept sealed, lasts essentially forever. You may someday see a cloudy, cobwebby blob form in the bottom of the jar. Do not throw it out. That is called the mother, and it is harmless, a sign of living, real vinegar. You can strain it out if it bothers you or leave it be. Either way, the vinegar is good. In this house, vinegar is one of the most used things we have. We make our own from the apples in the orchard, but you can buy it for $1 or $2, and a man should keep more than he thinks he needs, because vinegar does so many jobs. It preserves food, it cleans the house, it doctors the animals, it dresses the wounds. It is a whole medicine chest and pantry in a single bottle, and it will never expire on you. So this weekend, buy vinegar, more than you think you need, and store it sealed away from light. White vinegar keeps just as long and costs even less. Between the two of them, you have the foundation of nearly every pickle and preserve there is. The eighth food is maple syrup and sorghum molasses. When the sap runs in late winter and we boil it down to syrup, we are making one of the longest-keeping sweet foods there is. Pure maple syrup, like honey, is so concentrated in sugar that little can grow in it. Sealed and unopened, it keeps for many years. Once you open it, keep it cold, and it still lasts a very long time. And if a little mold ever does try to start on top of an opened jar, the old way was simply to skim it, bring the syrup to a boil, and re-jar it. Good as new. Sorghum molasses, which we cook down from the sweet cane sorghum, is the same kind of long-keeping sweet, and it carries iron and minerals that pure sugar does not. A spoon of molasses in the morning was an old tonic for tired blood, and it keeps for years in a sealed jar in the cool. These are not just sweets. In a house with no sugar shipped in, these are how you sweeten everything, how you give hard-working bodies quick energy, how you make the plain food of winter a pleasure instead of a chore. A row of jars of syrup and molasses in the cellar is money in the bank, and the bank never closes and the value never rots. So this weekend, buy real, pure maple syrup, not the colored corn syrup pretending to be it. Buy sorghum or molasses if you can find it. Keep them sealed and cool. They will sweeten your family's table for years. The ninth food is something purely ours. The Pennsylvania Dutch food called schnitz. Schnitz is simply dried apples cut in slices and dried until they are leathery and light, and we have been making it for as long as there have been apples in these hills. When the orchard comes in heavy in the fall, far more than any family could eat fresh, you do not let it rot. You slice it and dry it. Dried apples, kept dry and sealed. Keep for a year or more easily, and they carry all the sweetness and goodness of the fresh fruit in a fraction of the weight and space. A bushel of apples shrinks down to a sack you can lift with one hand. The same drying works for nearly any fruit, peaches, pears, berries, plums. The principle is always the same one you have heard me repeat all day. Take the water out, and there is nothing left for spoilage to feed on. It is the oldest preservation there is, older than salting, older than anything. The sun and the wind do the work for free. In winter, we soak schnitz back to soft and cook it into pies and stewed fruit and the old dish of schnitz and knepp, dried apples and ham and dumplings that has fed this family on cold Sundays for generations. It tastes like the fall it was put up in. So this weekend, dry your own apples in a low oven or a dehydrator when they are cheap and in season, or buy dried fruit with no added oil. Store it dry and sealed. You have just put summer in a jar for the winter. The 10th food is hardtack, the bread that outlasts armies. Bread spoils in days. You know this. So how did people carry bread across oceans and through long campaigns before there was any such thing as a preservative? They made hardtack. Hardtack is the simplest food imaginable, just flour and water, sometimes a little salt, mixed into a stiff dough, baked hard, and then baked again, dried until it is as hard as a board. With no fat, no yeast, no moisture left in it, there is simply nothing for spoilage to work on. Real hardtack, kept dry, lasts for years. There are pieces of it in museums from wars, long over. Still whole, still technically edible if you were desperate enough. You do not eat it like fresh bread. You soak it, You dunk it in coffee or broth or stew until it softens, the way soldiers and sailors and pioneers did. It is not fine eating, but it is reliable eating, and when nothing else is to be had, reliable is the only thing that matters. The reason I include it is to teach the principle, because once you see how hardtack works, you understand the whole game. Fat and water are the two things that make food spoil. Take them both out, and food becomes nearly immortal. Every long-keeping food on this list obeys that one law. So this weekend, know that you can bake hardtack in your own oven this afternoon with nothing but flour and water. Look up the old method. Make a batch, dry it hard, seal it dry, and tuck it away. It costs almost nothing, and it will be there years from now. The 11th food is apple butter and the long-cooked preserves. When we cannot dry all the apples, we cook them down. Apple butter is apples and cider simmered for hours and hours in a great copper kettle over a fire, stirred without stopping until it is dark and thick and spiced, and the whole community gathers to make it because no one family can stir a kettle that long alone. What that long cooking does is drive out the water and concentrate the sugar and the acid until the result is, like honey, an environment nothing can grow in. Properly cooked and sealed in jars, apple butter and other long-cooked high-sugar preserves keep for a year or more on the cellar shelf with no refrigeration at all, and they have kept families in sweetness through winters since long before any of us were born. Here I must give you a careful, honest word, because food that is put up wrong can make you sick, and I will not have that on my conscience. The high sugar and the fruit acid are what make these preserves safe. Low-sugar jams, or anything low in acid like plain vegetables or meat, are a different matter entirely and must be done by a proper, tested method, not by guesswork, or they are dangerous. So when you put up your own, follow a trusted, modern, tested recipe. The old wisdom and modern food safety agree on this. Respect the rules and your preserves are a treasure. Ignore them and they can hurt you. So this weekend, make or buy apple butter and high-sugar fruit preserves and store them sealed in a cool, dark place. Sweet armor against a long winter. The 12th food is chow chow and the pickled vegetables, the garden in a jar. At the end of the garden season, there is always a little of everything left. A few beans, some corn, a handful of peppers, the last of the cauliflower, none of it enough for a meal on its own. My people never let it go to waste. We pack it all into jars in a vinegar brine, and we call it chow chow, and it keeps the whole garden alive in glass through the dead of winter. The vinegar is what does it, that same self-preserving acid I told you about. In a strong enough brine, the acid keeps spoilage out, and the vegetables stay crisp and tangy and good for a year or more. Properly pickled and sealed, a jar of chow chow on the shelf is a jar of summer waiting for a gray February day. This is fermentation's cousin, and the same family includes sauerkraut, that staple of every German kitchen, cabbage and salt packed into a crock until it sours and keeps itself for months. Whether by vinegar or by salt and thyme, the principle is to make the food a place where the things that rot cannot live and the things that preserve can, and the same honest warning as before. Pickling and fermenting are safe and wonderful when done right, but the acid and salt levels are what make them safe. So follow a tested recipe. Done properly, this is some of the oldest and safest food preservation there is. So this weekend, learn to pickle. Start with something simple. A jar of pickles or chow chow you put up yourself, stored cool, will keep your garden's bounty long past the killing frost. The 13th food I saved for last on purpose, because it is the one that breaks the rule, and the exception teaches you the rule better than anything. It is rendered lard and tallow, fat that keeps if you treat it right. I told you all day that fat is the enemy of long storage, that oil goes rancid and ruins food. That is true. And yet rendered fat, Lard from the hog or tallow from the beef was one of the most precious stored foods my ancestors had, because fat is energy, and in the cold and the hard work of a farm winter, a body burns energy like a fire burns wood. The trick is in the rendering. When you slowly melt the fat down and strain out every bit of meat and water, what is left is pure, clean fat, and pure fat with no water and no bits of meat in it keeps far, far longer than you would think, especially packed into a crock and kept cold and dark, sealed from the air. The old people kept lard a year and more this way in a cold cellar or spring house. Sealed away from air, heat, and light, clean rendered fat is patient. But, and this is the honest but, fat does eventually turn, and rancid fat is no good, so this is the one food on the list you must watch and rotate, not store and forget. If it smells sharp or like old paint, it has turned and you let it go. Cold and dark and sealed are everything here. I include it because once you understand why fat is the hard case, you understand the whole science of food storage in your bones, water and fat, heat, air, and light. Master those 5 things and you can keep almost anything. So treated right, rendered fat is energy in the bank for the lean months. Render it clean, store it cold and sealed and dark, and use your nose. Now, my brother keeps a little stand by the road where the English stop and ask their questions, so I know what is forming in your mind, and I will answer the 3 biggest ones plainly. The first is always about safety. Amos, is it really safe to eat food that old? And here I will be more careful than the fellows who promise you that anything keeps forever, because I would rather lose your trust by being honest than keep it by being reckless. The dry, the sweet, the sour, the salty, honey, salt, sugar, rice, dried beans, dried corn, dried fruit, vinegar, syrup, hardtack, properly pickled and high-sugar preserves, these are the ones that truly last for years and years, and they are safe because they are dry or sweet or sour enough that nothing dangerous can grow. The ones you must respect and watch are the fats, and anything you put up wet in a jar at home, which must be done by a tested, trusted method. When in doubt, your nose and your eyes are good guides for spoilage, but they cannot see every danger, so for home-canned, low-acid foods, follow the rules exactly. Long-keeping food is a gift, but it is a gift with conditions, and the conditions are not hard. Dry, cool, dark, sealed, and follow the tested recipes. Do that, and you are safe. The second question is about pests. Mice, weevils, moths, the little thieves that find any food store. The answer is simple, and it is the same answer my grandfather gave. Seal everything in containers that a mouse cannot chew and an insect cannot enter up off the floor, and keep the storeroom clean. A tight lid is worth more than any poison. The old crocks did this job for 200 years, and the modern sealed buckets do it now. Seal it tight, and the thieves go hungry while your family stays fed. The third question is the one I find the saddest. Someone always says, if this is so simple, why doesn't everyone do it? And I want you to sit with that question because the answer is not a conspiracy. There was no meeting. It is something quieter than that. There is simply no money to be made in a food that you buy once and keep for 30 years. There is a great deal of money in a food with a clock printed on it, food designed to be eaten and bought and eaten and bought, over and over, world without end. Nobody had to plot anything. The foods that pay to be advertised are the foods that expire, and so those are the foods you grew up seeing, and the foods that last quietly in a cellar do not buy advertisements, and so you forgot they exist. That is all. That is the whole trick. It is not wickedness. It is just the natural drift of things when no one is paid to remember the old way. Let me leave you with something before I go. When I was a boy, my grandmother would take me down into the cellar with a lamp, because there was no electric light down there, and there still is not. And she would walk me along the shelves and name things. This honey is from the year your father was born. These beans are from 2 summers back. This vinegar, I could not tell you how old, my own mother started this crock. And I remember thinking as a child that the cellar was a kind of room full of time, that she had reached out and caught whole seasons and put them on a shelf, and that none of it could get away from her. I understand now what she was really showing me. She was showing me that her family could not be made to go hungry, not by a bad harvest, not by a hard winter, not by a closed road or an empty store or a year gone wrong. She had taken the abundance of the good times and made it wait patiently in the dark for the times that were not good. That cellar was not a pantry, it was a promise. It was her saying to her children and her grandchildren, across all the years, you will eat. You have lost that, not because you are foolish, but because it was quietly taken from you, one expiration date at a time, one trip to the store at a time, until you arrived at a house full of food that turns to garbage on a schedule and a family that would go hungry in a week if the truck stopped. You traded a cellar full of promises for a pantry full of countdowns, and most of you never even noticed the trade was made. I am not asking you to live the way I live. I am not asking you to give up your car or your lights or your stores. I am asking you to do one small thing this week. Buy one of these 13 foods, just one. Buy the honey or the salt or the bag of rice. Seal it up, put it somewhere cool and dark, and know that it will be there, good and ready, for years. Start your own cellar of promises, even if it is just one jar on one shelf. That single jar will change the way you see every other thing in your kitchen. Go to your pantry tonight. Pull out 3 things and read the dates on the bottom. Tell me in the comments what you find, and tell me where you are watching from. And tell me, do you have a cellar, a cool, dark place where the old way could begin again? I read every comment that comes in. The stories you send me are the reason I keep doing this. And if this rang true to you, if you are the kind of person who has long suspected that the old people knew things we have been talked out of remembering, then come back. Because the next thing I'm going to show you is the one my grandmother was proudest of. How this farmhouse keeps a cellar at a steady cool all year long, summer and winter both, with no electricity and no machinery of any kind, using nothing but the earth, the slope of the hill, and a few things any of you could build in a weekend. It is the room that made all 13 of these foods possible. And once you see how simple it is, you will never look at the ground under your house the same way again. I will show you. I will see you there. Stay fed, stay ready. And remember, the people who built this country with their hands never once worried about an empty shelf because they knew how to fill it and keep it filled. That knowledge is still here. It was never lost. It was only set down, and anybody who wants to can pick it back up.